Hey, Warner Brother, welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Ghost to Ghost Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the Beast and Family Podcast. We've got a great podcast for you guys. Joining me in segment number 2, we've got Mike Randle aboard. He does a tremendous work over at FTN Network. He is going to be talking about how he's taking a look at some of these injuries, which ones are the ones that are on his radar the most that he is going to be monitoring. We're also going to be chatting with him about these secret scrimmage results. I always chuckle whenever I say secret scrimmage results, just because typically these are not necessarily the world's greatest kept secrets, and there's video out there and everything like that, so I do have my question marks with calling it secret scrimmages, but I'm going to chat with him about if he does have any takeaways from any of these. Is it something that will cause him to affect his handicap a little bit? Is this a big giant nothing burger? And we're going to be talking about motivations with regards to these as well, because I treat them much like what we would preseason football. As we know, with regards to the NFL preseason, there are some coaches that they want to win all of their games, like John Harbaugh, and then there are other coaches that treat it like it's whose line is it anyway. Everything is made up and the points don't matter. So we're going to be chatting about that. Also going to be taking a look at a few teams that he's bullish/bearish on. Going to be a lot of Big Ten flair with regards to back half of the conversation with him. And then here in segment number 1, we did see a little bit of college basketball injury news, a few guys to round up. So we're going to be addressing that once again, just with my stance on these, and I air quotes here, secret scrimmages. If you're coming to me for a bunch of secret scrimmage results, you've come to the wrong place. Now, I will be monitoring who is not playing in some of these secret scrimmages. Some of the injuries, that's certainly going to be a takeaway. If we have like a big result or something like that, that is something that I'm going to be getting you guys all caught up on. But with regards to like Pittsburgh winning a secret scrimmage, with regards to like the final score of insert 2 schools here, that's not necessarily something that you're going to be coming to me for. Like Trilly Donovan, the burner ball account at Trilly Donovan, he does a great job here. Like he's tweeting out that Cal Baptist knocked off Cal State Northridge 96-82, and there's a little bit of a takeaway there because CSUN, they brought in a coach from the D2 level at Cal State Bernardino that really played up tempo. That sort of backs up what I was thinking there. But in terms of the actual results themselves, like Northwestern State knocking off Arkansas Pine Bluff 82-72 in a secret scrimmage, it's not going to cause me to all of a sudden be like hitting the panic button on either of those teams. I'm not really going to be making a lot of adjustments. I'm going to be diving in and trying to relay to you guys if there was anyone in/out of the fold, if there was anything earth-shattering with regards to some of those results, like Musa Cisse not playing for Ole Miss in their secret scrimmage against Houston. That's something that certainly we're going to be addressing, and that is something that is worth watching because Cisse is a 2-time transfer, so we're going to be taking a look there. And Adam Miller, Jose Perez not playing for Arizona State is something that we're going to be diving in on as well. But those are the sorts of notes that you're going to be getting on this podcast. Do want to give you guys that sort of information, and if you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of 2 ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at GN_81. Keep in mind, letters CM, name does not matter. As per usual, please do send these into the timeline, and the other way, find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you are able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. And, well, with regards to what we saw in college basketball on Saturday, we did see a lot of those secret scrimmages, and I actually just ran down a few of the takeaways there, like CSUN playing a little bit more up-tempo, the fact that with Arizona State, Adam Miller did not play in their secret scrimmage. There's really nothing with regards to an injury report, but it is something that I'm taking a look at. Darion Trammell also was a DMP for San Diego State. That was an Arizona State versus San Diego State scrimmage, which Arizona State won by a count of 72-68, but that is something that I'm going to be looking out for, along with the eligibility of Musa Cisse, because he is a 2-time transfer, and he was someone that did not hit the floor with regards to their secret scrimmage. But that's really the lone takeaways I have from all of those. I really don't take anything away from the final score itself. This is much more significant. We saw this come out via John Rothstein late on Saturday. Sean Bearsell of VCU, he is expected to miss 6 to 8 weeks with a non-contact foot injury. That just sounds bad, and he was expected to be a big part of everything that Utah State was looking to do this year. With Ryan Odom heading on over, you figured that he was going to be having to rely a lot on the guys that he brought with him from Utah State, like Bearsell, who last year shot 38.5% from three-point range, 10.5 points, 2.5 assists, right around 5.5 rebounds, 6'8", do-it-all sort of player. So that is a big loss in my opinion for VCU. And VCU is still going to have quite a bit of talent. Now, obviously, the guys that were there last year, many of them did get poached over, and many of them are now Penn State Nittany Lions, but with Utah State, they did pretty much the same thing. You had many of the Utah State guys like Max Shulga, along with Barisal, come on over. So now you've got to be thinking that Jason Nelson at the guard spot, more is going to be on his plate because you really don't have as many versatile players. Like you've got a Kune who comes in from Cal. He's at 6'9", but he doesn't necessarily have a ton of versatility. Roosevelt Wheeler, he's someone that at 6'11", he's more of a back to the basket big man. So this is going to greatly affect the way that VCU plays. Not as much versatility. Someone like Zeb Jackson, you've got to think that a lot more is going to be on his plate as well. So I do think that that is really something to be monitoring. Chance Westery, he is also going to be dealing with something as he had a lower body injury that became reported on Saturday. I know that John Rothstein for sure reported it. I'm sure that a few other outlets did as well. He is at Syracuse right now after last year. He was at Auburn, really didn't see any playing time while he was over at Auburn, so something that I don't think is going to be affecting this team too much. He was a pretty highly touted guy coming out of high school. 247 Sports, when he was coming out, they did rate him as a top 100 prospect with regards to his class. I believe it was of 2022. I might be mistaken on that, but with Mr. Westery, him being out of the fold is something that you do want to note for Syracuse and their depth, as well as Mr. Autry. He's probably going to be playing a little bit of a different system over there for Syracuse this year rather than what we saw in past years as well. And those were really the main takeaways that we did see from college basketball. So you see, we are taking a look at these secret scrimmage results, but not so much a final score. We are taking a look for some injury angles. We're trying to see if there is a team that all of a sudden is cranking up the tempo, is all of a sudden playing a little bit more slowly as well, and just trying to be able to get a gauge as to who we can expect out there on the floor night number one. So hopefully you guys are enjoying all this, and like I said, if you've got any questions, at gunit_81 on the old X. But coming up next, we've got a great chat with Mike Randle. He does amazing work over at FTN Network. We're going to be talking about his takeaways from some of these, and I air quotes here, secret scrimmages, some of the teams that he's bullish on coming into the year, and so much more right here on Cuts to Cuts Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the Beast Family Podcast.
Sports Betting Innovative Analytics has taken the guesswork and emotion out of sports betting to bring you an innovative and trustworthy resource to enhance your journey to becoming a winning player. With industry-leading money-back guarantee options backed by their sophisticated modeling, they want to introduce you to a system that's not widely seen or available to help you beat the bookmaker. Specializing in NBA, college basketball, and WNBA, your first week is always free. Get started at SBIA1.com today.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the VC Family Podcast. It is always great to be joined by this man as Mike Randle. He does tremendous work over at FTN, Fade the Noise Network, taking a look at all things college basketball. He is one of their chief content officers on top of all of his great work with regards to college basketball. I know he does amazing work on the football front as well as been able to do a great job finding some props, finding some nice edges with regards to the NFL front as well. You're able to follow Mike on Twitter/X at Randle Rant altogether, and does a great job with his own podcast, the Screen the Screener podcast, which you're able to find wherever you get this podcast. And Mike, it's always great to have you aboard. Thank you.
Hey, Greg, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. We're getting close. We're under 3 weeks, starting to look at Ken Palm for lines. I mean, this is the best time of year. It's exciting. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, it is very fun to have you aboard, and it is nice that finally we are getting close, and as we are getting close, we are starting to see some of these. They always call them secret scrimmage results. I don't know why, because now with most of these scrimmages, they're on video. There's a lot of people in attendance when it comes to media members, what have you. I mean, if they're calling it a secret, well, the secret has gotten out, so there's that. But what do you make out of some of these scrimmage results? Because I'm certainly not going to be one thinking, oh, Boise State knocked off Cal by 15 in a scrimmage. All of a sudden, Boise State needs to go up my power rankings by like 10 spots or anything like that. But I do think that there is something to be taken away by some of these rotations, some of the guys that are not out there on the court, especially the guys not, because that could be a little bit of an injury concern. But what do you make out of some of these scrimmage results?
Yeah, the big thing for the secret scrimmages, Greg, are the individual performances. So I know you've seen this. Jaden Epps reportedly dropped 46 points for Georgetown against Wake Forest. It just makes me sort of pay attention that maybe Epps coming from Illinois is going to be a bigger part of this offense. So it's very hard. I don't take a lot away from the results if someone was upset or whatever. I'd rather wait to the beginning of the season. Last year, of course, Louisville had all the troubles at the beginning of the season. It wasn't something that you could necessarily anticipate. But I do keep an eye on individual players to see if anyone reportedly, because we don't know how many points Epps scored, but let's say, Greg, 46 was really 26. I mean, even if it's 26 points, to know that he could be one of the top players for Georgetown in scores could help us with some player props as we get into the season.
Yep, I think so as well. And I was very curious to look at that as well. And I don't think that Mr. Epps is going to be averaging 46 points a game or anything like that. I don't think we should be going to that extreme. And I don't think that Stans of Georgetown should be thinking that all of a sudden he's going to set the NCAA record for points in a season or anything. But I do think that those are things to be taken a look at. And I always think that it is a little bit difficult to be gauging these scrimmage results because, as we know, with regards to for an NFL reference preseason, there are different motivations as well. Like John Harbaugh of the Ravens, he always wants to win all those preseason games. Those of us as bettors have made a lot of money betting on the Ravens during the preseason. Meanwhile, you've got other teams in which they treat it like it's whose line is it anyway? Everything's made up and the points don't matter. And I think that that's one of the biggest things to take a look at with regards to some of these scrimmages as well, because there are some teams that they're treating it like a dress rehearsal, and there's other teams that they're just trying to figure out what works, and they are really not concerned about that final score.
Yeah, so like, for example, my love for Florida Atlantic because things just happened to work out last year. They have a so-called secret scrimmage against UNC. Now, UNC is a team that had a lot of regression last year that really struggled with Hubert Davis, but they're returning a tremendous amount of talent. So that's a coach that I think is at an inflection point. So if I get any insight there from that scrimmage, it's something I would look at because I do think teams that have returned solid core veteran players like the Owls would have a huge advantage early in the season. So, we talked about Epps, Ed Cooley now going down to Georgetown, of course, what style they're going to play. How are they going to be different from the past? That's really just a little bit of a glimpse into what goes on. But Alabama playing in a closed preseason scrimmage, a lot of this is difficult for us to figure out. But even someone like BYU basketball hosting Stanford, BYU basketball, huge change with them going to the Big 12. I don't know if you'll agree, but at home, they're very dangerous. They've always played teams like Gonzaga and St. Mary's very tough at home. So that's a team that I expect to be an underdog in a lot of these Big 12 conference games that could be a very live bet if they're catching too many points. So just paying attention to the peripheral, how they do, how they perform, who they're playing, what do we hear, just gives us a little glimpse, but it's nothing we can draw conclusions on until we see actual games when the season starts.
Yeah, and it's exciting to be able to see these guys out there on the court. It's exciting to see actual results as well. But I totally agree with you there that we've got to be taking it with a little bit of a grain of salt right now, as Mike Randle, who does tremendous work over at FTN Network, is showing to be on Coast to Coast Hoops. And something that I was alluding to a little bit as well is trying to see who is / not playing in some of these scrimmages, because if there is someone that is being held out, like I know that John Rothstein a few days ago was tweeting out that Mark Sears, I don't know if the scrimmage already happened or if it's going to be happening, he's out of the fold for Alabama. That's certainly something that you want to be taking a look at as well. And I think that that's one of the biggest things to be able to monitor as well, who is / is not playing in some of these scrimmages. And as the folks like Mr. Rothstein, Jeff Goodman, all these beat reporters at various schools are tweeting out injury information, I think that that's one of the most important things that a fan of a college basketball team or a bettor can do, because that's really going to be playing a pivotal role in what we do see night number one.
Yeah, and things like that situation are critical when you look at the conference they reside in. So let's look at Alabama. I have loved the SEC conference. Greg, I recognize that the Big 12 conference is number one in the country. I get it. But as per Ken Pom, the Southeast Conference is going to be second, and it's a really exciting brand of basketball, and the bottom teams in that conference can compete, unlike a conference like the ACC. So getting that information is critical, because if you look at the SEC, Alabama near the top, but there are questions there. Tennessee, of course, can they close in March? Arkansas, are they going to be able to shoot? With Eric Musselman, they're going to play great defense, and they give you 100% on the defensive end, especially against upper competition. But can they score consistently? Then you have Auburn as well, which is a team that looks to be very good this year, with Bruce Pearls entering his 10th year at Auburn. So those conferences, like the SEC, are very bunched together. And I think if we can get some insight and a leg up, we can see how things go. Auburn is a team I'm very high on here with Johnny Broome. A lot of athleticism. They were 21-13 to the over last year. So if I can get a little glimpse, I like it, but I need to know who's playing. Sears is a critical player this year for Alabama. They are not that much better than everyone else in that conference. It's very tight. Florida's coming, LSU, very tricky.
Yeah, and I do think that the SEC is one of the most difficult conferences to gauge, because I echo your sentiments on Auburn. They're a team that I'm very high on, and up until the injury that we saw a few weeks ago to Tolu Smith, I was really in on Mississippi State as well. But as we know, Tolu Smith, he is going to be missing at the very least the beginning part of the season. Sounds like they're going to get him back sometime in conference play, but we just don't know when at this point. And I'm not sure how you felt about Mississippi State before/now, but in terms of injury information, what we've seen, that might be the biggest injury right now in all of college basketball, because I think that Mississippi State goes from a team that perhaps could be in that top 4, top 5 in the SEC, a top 25 team, to now you got to question whether or not they're going to be able to make the NCAA tournament if you can't come back in time.
Yeah, I love Chris Jans. Boy, he's really put his stamp on that program following Ben Howland, who I thought was very underrated. I mean, you get to 3 Final Fours in a row, Ben Howland with UCLA, nothing to disregard. But they really came on at the end of the year. They struggled. They were 12-8, 1-7, but then they really caught fire. They won 5 games in a row in conference, never easy. Away game at South Carolina, took care of business. Won an away game at Arkansas, went to OT against Ole Miss in a rivalry game. Then Missouri, who was very good. So really had them rolling. High expectations of them coming into this year. What I will say about Mississippi State, Greg, some of these teams don't challenge themselves in the non-conference, and we ridicule them. But given the injury to Tolu Smith, I think that may actually help them. The Mississippi State's non-conference, Arizona State, Tennessee Martin, North Alabama, Washington State, Nicholls State. I won't even continue it because it doesn't get much better. But until they get to late December against North Texas in a semi-home, Rutgers in a semi-away, then they get into the heart of their schedule where they have South Carolina. I mean, they really don't have an over-the-top challenging game until they get to Wednesday, January 10th at home against Tennessee. So if they can rest him, I think they can tread water and have a decent non-conference. They could really come on. Their easy non-conference really helps them because of the injury to Smith.
Yep, and that is going to be something so key to take a look at, as I think that Mississippi State, as well as playing in that Barstool Invitational or one of those multi-team events towards the beginning part of the season as well. So we're going to know very early how they look without Tolu Smith and how long they're going to need to hold down the fort without him, as we've got Mike Randle, who does tremendous work over at FTN Network, joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And obviously that Tolu Smith injury is big, but I also do think that it is big to see how UConn handles the Donovan Clingan injury, because with regards to the timetable, he should be good to go if they really want to throw him out there for the Northern Arizona game. I've talked about this a few times on the podcast, and I'll say it again. I feel like you probably hold him out for that Northern Arizona game. What do you have to gain versus what do you have to lose? I think that's really big. And if you're having a tough time with Northern Arizona, best of luck being able to compete in the Big East. But I do think that is going to be something to monitor, because coming into the year, I did have a concern even before this injury with Donovan Clingan with regards to his cardio, his stamina, because he really didn't have to play a ton of minutes last season. And you've got to wonder how UConn is going to want to both ramp it back up for the start of really those competitive games against Kansas and what have you, and at the same time, keep it protected to make sure that the injury doesn't get any worse.
Yeah, what's really interesting, Greg, is teams that have won the national championship over the last 5 to 6 years have had stretches during the season where they really struggled. Let's not forget that UConn lost 5 of 6 games from late December to early January. They went from 3-0, 14-0, 3-0 to 15-5, 4-5, and then they rallied. They need to have all their pieces together. Adama Sanogo was a huge force for them inside, and you nailed it with their schedule. So fine, Northern Arizona, Stonehill, Mississippi Valley State, all of those games will be 25-point or more spreads. But then there's Indiana, who's massive this year. I don't know how successful they're going to be because of that sort of odd style where they just emphasize the bigs and there's questions about their backcourt. But in this matchup against UConn, if they don't have the big there, that's going to be a huge advantage. Then Manhattan, okay, fine, New Hampshire, but then here comes Kansas away, North Carolina, Gonzaga in a semi away. So they need him healthy. I think it's very smart here what Danny Hurley's going to do, hold him out until he's ready. But make no mistake, they need him healthy here. They start their Big East schedule, Seton Hall, St. John's. I mean, there's some tough games there, so we could see them really struggle. And I always tend to sort of question, Greg, teams coming off the championship. Are they that hungry? They are not as deep here as last year, and they really need him. So they should keep him out until absolutely necessary. I would hold him out until at least Indiana, but I don't think they beat Indiana without him.
I do think that is going to be really something to be able to monitor. And certainly, I do think that it is a fine line that you tread as well, because you don't want to completely throw him out there cold. Maybe you get him like 10 minutes, something like that, against some of these lesser teams, just so that way he's got some actual game reps. Because when you're having to play game number one against a team like Indiana, if we look a little bit further down the line, Kansas, that's a roll of the dice as well. So a little bit of a tricky spot for them. And we are talking about some of these critical guys that are dealing with a few ailments. Are there a few others that just come to the forefront for you that you are monitoring? Because I feel like the ACC with Jack Clark at Clemson, Damari Monsanto over at Wake Forest, those are ones to take a look at. Certainly, we already hit upon Mark Sears and what he means to Alabama. But are there a few other ones that might be going a little bit under the radar that you think are really worth monitoring for night number one and beyond?
Yeah, Monsanto is a big one, which is concerning for Wake Forest because, again, with the ACC, Steve Forbes going to his fourth season here, he's shown that he can coach. And Monsanto was a lights-out shooter for them, really stretched the defense and makes a huge difference. Now you're dealing with Andrew Carr, Matthew Marsh, Cam Hildreth. I mean, they need that here to compete in the ACC. The other ones I'm worried about are players that have either not been eligible or were supposed to be eligible, and now they're not. I mean, we talked about this with a couple key players, teams that I was really high on. You look in the Big 12 with Cincinnati. I mean, this was a team that I loved because I thought they could really, if you look at this, you have Kansas, you have Baylor, you have Houston. But I always want to look for one of those teams in the middle that can make a run. And the Bearcats were my choice here. But unfortunately, they've really frustrated. They have not been able, and they're applying for a waiver to get the 6'10" Temple transfer, Jameel Reynolds or Aziz Bendiago, the 7-footer inside. That would have given them a huge leg up against Kansas with Hunter Dickinson. So players who have had injuries or players who have not gotten the waiver, and I don't know about you, I'm struggling to find that information. I feel like coaches are not revealing it because they don't want us to know because they're appealing and hoping the players can come through. But you make these transfers, you are trying to acclimate teams together. And that's why I like a lot of mid-majors early on the lines in the non-conference, because give me a team with consistency that doesn't have a lot of transfers, that is not battling health problems, and you're going to get favorable numbers early in the year. So you talked about Monsanto, and the other one, like we discussed before off air, is about players who have not been ruled eligible that these teams are really relying on for big minutes, like Cincinnati with the two bigs in the Big 12, the toughest conference in the country.
Oh, and no doubt in regards to the Big 12 as well, a team that we've talked about all off season long. We are still awaiting what's going to be happening with Rayquan Battle as well. So That's another shoe that needs to drop, and is going to be playing a big role into how I handicap West Virginia towards the beginning part of the season, as well as Mike Randle, who does great work over at FTN Network, joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And as you dive a little bit more in, because I know you're doing a great job with all of your conference previews over on the Screener podcast along with FTN Network, as you're taking a look, and we're starting to get more clarity as to who will / will not be out there on the court night number one. Are there a few teams in general that you are feeling a little bit more bullish / bearish on? Because I'm right there with you with Cincinnati, them not being able to get the waivers for the two big men. That is absolutely critical for them. Like I said, with West Virginia, a little bit of a wait and see mode with them as well. But are there a few teams in general that, just as you're looking a little bit more, you're starting to change your tune on them coming into the start of the season?
Greg, at this point last year, Indiana was thought to be the favorite in the Big Ten. I am well aware that Purdue and Michigan State are probably light years ahead of the other opponents. However, I think we are dismissing Northwestern a little bit because they lose Chase Audige. Boo Buie is back, who is one of the best guards in the country, period. I saw so many of their games. The Purdue game at home comes to mind, where they simply could not score. But their defense under Chris Collins, his 11th year, was so solid that they were able to get the win at home. They were 21-13 against the spread. They were 14-19-1 to the under in their games. They have Ty Berry back. They got Ryan Langborn from Princeton, who wasn't a great shooter last year in totality, but the prior 2 years, he was close to 40%, and you saw him light teams up in the NCAA tournament when Princeton made their run. Barheiser has some experience, and the big man Nicholson inside gives you a body that you can at least go against Zach Edey and Michigan State. So one of the teams I was shocked is really not being regarded that highly is Northwestern. And I believe in the preseason poll, they were ranked something like 8th or 9th. I just don't think that's fair. I think this is a good team that can finish in the top 4 in the Big Ten again. They have leadership. Yes, they lost Chase Audige. Yes, he was a fantastic defender. But if you have Boo Buie back and consistency and bring in a shooter like Langborn, I found myself a little higher on them than consensus. And I think they are a very live team in the non-conference because of their style, because of their consistency, and when they are home underdog, which I think is going to be often because I think people are disregarding them as a one-year wonder last year that they just got hit lightning in a bottle and they were going to regress. I don't think so.
With this Big Ten as well, I just take a look at the entirety of the conference, and I think that there's a very clear top 2 there because I certainly wouldn't be putting them up against Purdue. I think it's the top team in the conference, and Michigan State, I think it's a very clear number 2. But after that, it's a jumbled up mess. I'd probably go with Illinois at number 3, but once again, as it always is with the Big Ten, I do feel like this year, perhaps you've got a little bit more of a tier with regards to those top 2. If you want to go top 3, I think that that's a little bit fair as well, but I think that with the Big Ten, once again, you just have a big, giant log jam in the middle, and a team like in Indiana, I know that there are some people bullish on Wisconsin. I need to see it a little bit more to believe it there, but I do think that there is some room for a team like that to improve. And hey, Michigan, they're a team that really underachieved last year. I think that there might be a little bit of upside for them as well if Olivier Kamwa could be a difference maker.
Yeah, they're banking on Kamwa being a huge difference maker for them. He was fantastic in the tournament, especially in their big win against Duke. The question is, can he be consistent enough? You know, Juwan Howard, I always struggle, Greg, with coaches that have a tremendous amount of success quickly because I think it takes time to build it, and I think there's an adjustment curve that happens after. We're seeing with Hubert Davis. We've seen it with several other coaches. Another team that I will throw out at you is in the SEC. We talked about them being jumbled. How about the Florida Gators? I'm a big Todd Golden fan. They were mediocre last year, struggled with Colin Castleton. But how about Riley Kugel, 6'5", Gators guard? He is a breakout player for me. Over the final 10 games of his freshman year, he was 17.3 points per game while shooting over 40% from deep. And the minutes played was the most revealing stat. He played only 6 minutes against Florida State early. Then we get to the SEC tournament. He's on the floor for all 40 minutes of the tournament for the Gators. I like Todd Golden. They're flying under the radar. They have some balance. They got Walter Clayton Jr., who was a great scorer for Pitino at Iona. Kind of like the Gators here as well. As you can see, I gravitate to those middle teams in power conferences because I think there's betting value.
Oh, I always think that they have the best betting value as well. Sometimes they can be some of the best fades as well because these are typically the teams where you think that, they're going to be halfway decent, like Loyola Chicago, I think is a great example last year where we thought that they were going to be pretty solid. And if you faded them last year, you were able to make a bunch of money. And if you banked on Kansas State last year, you made a bunch of money on them as well. So I always do think that there's betting value if you can get those teams right as to which ones are going to be bad and which ones are going to be a stink burger. There's always a ton of value, but what's even more valuable is getting you on the show, Mike. You do absolutely amazing work over at FTN Network. You do an incredible job with regards to football, basketball, list goes on and on. I know you, much like myself, can't wait for the season to start. So love to get people at home know it's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
You can follow me at Randall Red, all the stuff we have going on at FTN Bets. I am banging out the conference previews, the team previews, mid-majors, top lists. Of course, Screen the Screener, like I said, with my partner, Gus Kern. interns do a great job there. And we're just getting ready. So FTN Bets, FTN Fantasy. We got NBA starting up soon. It's just an exciting time here. October, November, Greg, busy month with all the pro sports.
Oh, it certainly is. We've got the sports equinox coming upon us next week when the NBA season starts up. So there's a lot of excitement there. Mike does a great job of being able to cover it all over there at FTN Network, and his time on this podcast is always appreciated. Big thanks to Mike for joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And if you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you are able to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @GNet_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, Amy does not matter. As per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is via an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast by that 5-star review. And we are just 2 weeks away from the start of the season. I've already done all 32 conference previews for this podcast. So if you're on like Apple Podcasts, Google Play, wherever your podcast, if you're looking for a specific conference preview, just look down the list. I've got them all labeled, so we've got you guys covered there. And once we get in season, it's going to be picks and analysis every single game, every single day on this podcast. I am so looking forward to it. Always appreciate you guys tuning in, and I will be back with you once again tomorrow. And I'm with you guys every single day on this podcast. Thank you so much.